I'm an alcoholic and an addict. My problem is Marsha. About 5 days, Friday. Was it Friday of last week? Heidi and I were talking, and she said, "There's nobody to do step two and whatever." And I said, "I'll do it." And then I thought to myself, why? Why would you do that? Because step two, 3, 7, 11 were the ones that I had a huge problem with coming into this program. But I committed, and so here we go. So it's not organized, not at all. But then again, we ever really organized. And these are just, please remember that these are just my thoughts, and how I view this. So, and the 12 and 12, step 2 is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I would love to sum up this thing by just saying, for me, it was somebody said, "Well, do you believe you can get better?" Yeah. Okay, let's move on to step 3. That's it. Done. Don't worry about the rest of the words or anything like that. But I couldn't do that. I was one of those people that spent a lot of time arguing and everything because, when they talk about power greater than ourselves, I would say, okay, fine. They'd say, well, the ocean is more powerful than you. I'm like, yeah, okay, but what does that have to do with my sobriety? Anything that came up, I'd say, okay, I get that. Well, what does that have to do with my sobriety? And so that's part of what was the challenging part. So what I've heard about step 2, step 2 is you can break it down into 3. We came to, and we came to believe. I can understand that, absolutely fine. I think step 2 is where a lot of the acronyms for God came from, because there's a part in this that it's talking about relying on God, and it's like, I can't even stand hearing that word, let alone all the beliefs and everything. So, what I found interesting about step 2 in the 12 and 12 is that it's very God heavy. There's a lot of talk about God in this, and I. Just what was read in the beginning, Tony was reading, that this is not a religious program. So if it's not a religious program, why is basically the whole chapter talking about God and how you come to believe in God, or how you need to believe in God? And I don't really hear anything spiritual in it. Spirituality, if I believed in the whole spirituality part, would be talking about the principles behind the program, and how to get yourself right sized with the principles and things like that. But the whole thing is talking about, from what I see, and you'll hear, talking about the one that believes, or the one that had faith before and came back to believe, or there's the religious elements, and it's really annoying. So what I pulled out of this, and what I think so you do have to do some mental gymnastics with this chapter, right? Jump over whatever it is you need to, and for me, sorry, not what you need to, what I had to do. When I first read this chapter, it was a lot of mental gymnastics, trying to really look at the content of the chapter. If I get rid of all the other stuff, there is some pretty decent stuff in this chapter. One of the, first off, it says in here, like, they talk about the belligerent one. I am the belligerent one, the one who just will not believe whatsoever. Like, the whole concept of God has nothing to do with me, which is really interesting because I live in a very God-fearing household. And I used to have these conversations with my mom, and you'll see later on in the chapter, it talks about this, if all these bad things are happening, and I want all these things, like, and God isn't providing it, so what is the use for God? I used to say that to my mom all the time. How is it that you can believe in a God that have allowed all these things that have happened to you happen? And what my mother said to me, which really helped me understand a lot, she said, that's not my God's job. My God does not control the world, does not find parking spaces, does not prevent people from having illnesses and stuff. She said, my God is here to comfort me when things fuck up and I need to calm myself, or when things go really good and I want to congratulate myself. That's the only purpose of my God. Everything else, that's just life, and life is life. The one part of this chapter that I took from it, because it's take what you need and leave the rest behind. The part in here that says, the three statements that are found in the first couple pages says, first, Alcoholics Anonymous does not demand that you believe anything. All of its 12 steps are but suggestions. Now, what I have to remember is that that's what the words of the book say, and I can understand that. What I'm having a hard time with up here is what everybody else has to say, right? It's everybody else's thoughts and opinions and everything like that that get in there. And I think that was what I had a huge problem with as well. Because when I would read things, I would just hear everybody else's words. I would hear the believers pointing their fingers in my face, telling me I needed to believe, and then the extreme atheists talking about all these other things. But if I just read what's happening there, and I was told, never let anybody read your big book for you. Don't let anybody read your 12 and 12. But I have to decipher this. And I believe in that statement. I understand that statement. They're just suggestions. They don't have to. I had a sponsor once that I said, I don't get that. I don't believe in that. And they just went, okay, let's move on. And that was it. End of discussion. There was no debating. There was no anything like that. So that was the first part, and then the whole debating thing is what I've seen that read next. To get sober and stay sober, I don't have to swallow all of step 2 right now, and that is true, because that's what that sponsor said to me. It's like, okay, you don't get it, then just let's move on. And you know what? We did move on, and eventually things started to make sense to me. It happened with all of the steps. And the last part is just resign from the debating society and quit bothering yourself with such deep questions. That was what rang true for me. But what I had to resign from was arguing with the believers. Once I stopped listening to what they had to say, once I stopped taking in them pointing their fingers in my face and whatever, and just said, okay, that's something I don't believe in. As long as I don't drink, everything's going to be okay. And those are the things that I take from this that I think are pretty awesome. I don't really have very much to say about the rest of it, because as I said, the rest of it talks about, the intellectual in us, and that we're so smart, we outsmart ourselves. And that's true. That's true. But I don't understand why the whole religious part of that has to come into this, and you'll hear all of that as the reading is done. It talks about, faith, and the one that did have faith and now has faith again, or the one that's full of faith, but they're still drinking and all that stuff. So, if I condense this all together and I look at it, if I just take all that other stuff out, right, this chapter does make sense, because for me, I came to believe that as long as I continue with the rest of the program, that I was going to be okay, because it's the program, it's the plan of action that's being done, right? It's not really the words, it's the actions that go behind it, and those people that have managed to stay sober for a long time are the ones that are doing the work. They're the ones that are doing the inventories and figuring out what their behaviors that society doesn't deem very acceptable. They're looking at those things. They're the ones that are making amends, all of that stuff, right? Whether you have to rely on a God to do it, then fine. Who cares? Are you doing the program? And that's what it boils down to for me. So I came to believe that as long as I continue the rest of the program, that I was going to be okay. The only acronym that I will consider for the God thing is grow or die. I knew that if I didn't grow up and do this, then nothing was going to change. I wasn't going to get better, and that's the important part of this. And the biggest part of this has to do with willingness, right? It says just have a little bit of willing. I don't have to have willingness to understand that there is a God. I have to be willing to do the program. That's the way I've deciphered this, right? To have that door of willingness open just a little bit. And I've got a lot of door stoppers. I really, really do. So my door was open like a fraction, tiny bit. And eventually, from doing the program and doing it the way that I understood it, it really started to make sense to me. So, I'm not gonna get into a lot of the whole things in here, but what I'm gonna ask for is, when we get to the sharing part, if you relate to any of these people that they're going to be describing in this, and when it believers, faithful people, anything like that. If you were any of those, I really would like to hear about your experiences as being one of those. Like, did you come in knowing God and then God left, or the other way around? Are you the belligerent one? All of that stuff. I really would be interested to know whether or not you fall into that category. Also, the other part of the step is about the whole thing about returning to sanity. Okay, and I think that's more important actually than the whole coming to believe part. I had to make sure I fully understood step one, which was conceding to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic, right? And understanding that, to return myself to sanity, I have to accept the insanity that was in my life. I have to accept the consequences of the actions that I did, right? But actually, it wasn't the consequences of the action. I had to accept that, the decisions that I made stone cold sober. That thought that comes before the drink, that's the insanity of my life, because those are the things that would bring all the bullshit that would happen, right? So step two is not just about, coming to believe that I can get better. I have to really think about the fact that, my life was out of control. It was insane, not because of the drinking, but because of the way I was thinking. And that thinking is what led me to the drink. So do I understand that insanity that was there, and am I willing to take the actions and do the steps in order to bring me back to that point of sanity, which is, soundness of mind? Am I willing to do that? And if I'm willing to do that, then the sanity will return. I think by this point, people will argue yes or no, whatever. I think sanity already has come back at this point, because I'm not drinking. So that thought before the drink, it's there, right? But I can trust myself now to know that I can have that thought and I don't have to put action to it. So in conclusion, what I think of step two and what I get from this is I came to believe that I can have a thought and not have to put an action to it, which means I don't drink. The answer is that I don't drink. I came to believe that if I do the steps, the insanity will go away eventually. I don't know how long that's going to take, but I'm willing to put in the time to find. And this is all about, going within, because, that one part of the big book, a chapter I hate, but the line that I like is that we found the deep reality we found the great reality deep within. So I have to go inside here and go in there. And that's where the work starts, and that's where it's done. So I'd say if I don't go within, I will go without. And without is I'll go without all of you. I'll go without that soundness of mind that I found for the here and now, where my feet are, right where my feet are. And the last thing that I wanted to do was the very last paragraph in this chapter. I wanted to change it up, the summary of all of this, that I need to not worry about all the bells and whistles of all of this. It says, therefore, step two is the rallying point for all of us, whether agnostic, atheist, or former believer. We can stand together on this step. True humility and an open mind can lead us to faith. And every AA meeting is an assurance that God will restore us to sanity if we rightly relate ourselves to him. And what I say is that every AA meeting is assurance that you all, right, will restore me to sanity if I rightly relate to what you have to say, which means the similarities and not the differences. And we can do this together. It's not like, what else did I hear? I can't, he can't, so let him. No, I can't. We can, so I'll get the hell out of my own way and let you help me with that. That's how I break this down. So that's it for me. I hope you got something out of it. If you didn't, go talk to your sponsor. And yeah, just keep your head out of your butt and do the next right thing. That's what this is all about to me. So thanks, Heidi. Gave me a lot to think about, and thank you all for being here. And yeah, so I'll turn it back over to Tony, and then I'll watch every hand in this place just shoot up, and we'll move on. So thanks.
Well, thank you so much.